Okay, welcome back. We just finished behavioural. We're just going to move on to what's it called again? Psychoanalytic and psychodynamic. Okay, so to put it simply, Sigmund Freud was a physician who developed a revolutionary new approach to treating patients. Okay, so he believed that childhood experiences have an important influence on behaviours. Okay, so he pretty much pushed that the critical time in life is childhood, and the experience that you have in it is going to determine what kind of behaviors you show in adulthood. Okay, so it could be something like someone who is neglected might be needy, and neglected in childhood might be needy when they're in adulthood. Or it could be that someone who is wealthy when they're in childhood and gets what they want becomes, not the word sport I'm looking for a different word, not maybe lazy. Okay, that they're being handed things to them that they don't actually haven't earned anything and know the value of currency because of it. So maybe those are two examples of that. But on top of that, he also had his concepts based that an unconscious mind exists in the head as well as a conscious mind. Okay, so they're not like that and that. But in regards to that, he thought that the unconscious mind was anything that is not driven by free will, and anything that, say, was traumatic in childhood could literally be locked away in the head and left there. Okay, and later on in adulthood, if it's not dealt with or addressed, it can create a lot of issues. Okay, and can create the behaviours that aren't actually part of social norms that we know. Okay, so that's just one other area or approach. So, cognitive. The word cognition or cognitive is talking about thought processes, mental processes. Okay, so whenever you hear the word cognitive, which we hear a hell of a lot in psychology, you need to be thinking of the brain actually thinking. Okay, so funnily enough, you have to be thinking about thinking. All right, so cognitive psych and the relationships between what we think and how we behave. Okay. If you've ever been told off by a teacher or a parent or even just an adult who said to you, what were you thinking when you were doing it? And you go, I don't know, I just did it. More common in adolescent boys than it is in adolescent girls with those kind of comments, because usually girls have a bit more cognition going on before behaviour. But don't want to stereotype. Just as a person, I know that you're all females in the classroom and only male in the classroom. So in regards to that comment of cognition, it probably applies to me more than it does you. But in a cognitive approach, it's what are the thought processes and how does that influence a behavior. So this approach was greatly created within the development of IT, so computers. And there is a metaphor of viewing the mind as a type of computer. Okay, you've heard of someone calling the mind a computer before, but it's usually cognitive approaches in psychology where they use this a lot. So if you can think of the second funny photo I'll put up. Okay, you don't have to say it, just think of what it was. How did you remember it? Okay, because it was just before. It was easy to remember because it was just before. Yeah, but what has happened is you've literally encoded it in your head. Okay, you've encoded what I'm saying or what you've seen, and it's been input from the environment, the PowerPoint or the recording, just like a computer would if it's been typed on. A metaphor when it comes to a processing computer with IT. Okay. Now, humanistic, when it shows up, there it is. Humanistic. This psychological approach is deliberately less scientific than the cognitive approach. If you think about, you've got cognitive approach over here, humanistics over here on the other end of the spectrum. Oh, my hand's not on the camera. There it is. So they're pretty much entirely the opposite of each other in regards to approaches in psychology. But what this is looking at is that everyone is an individual and they have a conscious experience and that they have their own potential growth. They have their own uniqueness about them. Okay. Cognitive tends to look at everyone has an ability like a computer, and that, whereas humanistic takes into account everything else about our uniqueness, about our experiences. Okay. All, just as a side note, pausing on these approaches, they don't literally sit black and white with each other. They don't sit one's here, one's here, one's here. they can overlap a little bit. Okay, it's a way of understanding psychology, a way of understanding our behavior, how we interact with things, the world, with everything. Okay, back on humanistic. So it shows that as we considered unique, it is interested in the growth of how the individual thrives in its environment. How does someone who's unique here and someone who's unique over here, so completely different of each other, how do they thrive in their own environment when it's the same environment? But we know with the humanistic approach, they're considered completely different of each other. Okay, so it is argued that if a person had psychological problems, it was a result of a blockage of a need to develop as a human. Okay, we all want to be the best person we can be, even if you don't think it. Not many people walk around and go, "God, I hate being the best, best person of a best version of myself. I hate being, hate being productive. I hate being nice. I hate being this. I hate being that." Internally, most people, 99.9% of the population, will say that they want to strive to be the best human or develop as the best person they can be in themselves. That's where this approach comes from. Okay, biological. Show up. Sorry, the computer's got a fair bit of lag on it. We've got a lot of time here though. Biological is looking at, and I'll just correct, it is looking at, it's looking at the processes of medicine and processes of, the screen's gone a bit black, but bear with my voice, okay? It looks at the medicine sides of things, okay, within psychology. So it's looking at everything that's got to do with the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, the internal processes that go on in the body. There we are, we're back on. The internal processes that go on in the body and the endocrine system, how they actually create, make us interact with the world. How do they actually create behaviors, okay? So if you get scared, I always use this example for some unknown reason, but it's the one that comes to me. If someone is sitting in the woods and a bear comes along, okay, what's going to happen when the bear sits there and growls at them? Not many people go, "Oh, it's a bear, that's pretty cool," and walk on, all right? You get scared by it, your central nervous system kicks into your peripheral nervous system and says, "Look, there's a bear there. We need the fight or flight system going, and we need the fight or flight. We need to either do something to this bear or run away from it." So biologically, something's happening in us, but externally, we're having these behaviors happen. Okay, so biological approach looks at what happens inside that creates the outside of us. Okay, what happens inside of the body that creates the body to do what it has to do. There is a massive, massive, massive emphasis on genetics in this. And if you ask Mr. Mello, this is probably the best approach because he's a biology teacher and he's a bit biased with that. But nonetheless, okay, so the focus on genetics takes the nature side of the debate with nature and nurture. So when it looks at what is it, nature or nurture, that's most is creating us to be the people we are, it would say in a biological approach, the people who study biological approaches to psychology, they'd say nature, okay? Yet it still can't be concluded, funnily enough. So in order to find and prove the concepts within biological approaches to psychology, very invasive techniques are used, unfortunately. But that's the only way that we can look internally to the body. So sometimes, not that people are putting their hand up and saying, "I want to have the surgery so you can see what goes on in my body." Certain research is done within surgery to know what's going on in the body. So surgery can show us what's going on internally, how it works. Electrical stimulation, which can be viewing the inside of the brain and what parts are firing at what time. So it works in certain situations, creating a scenario where certain situations create certain behaviors. So let's look internally at the brain, see what parts are stimulated there. Neuroimaging, so you can have a look at parts of the brain in regards to the similar thing to electrical stimulation, but the neuroimaging is when someone's sitting completely still. Okay, effects of medication, so giving medication and seeing how that interacts with the body. My partner's a pharmacist, so her part of psychology that she needed to do in her degree was very, very, very strongly shown strongly part of the biological approaches to psychology. Okay. I will begin to be able to string my words a little bit better together. It's the first time I've got back into it after the break as well. So bear with me with my words. Okay, I'm waiting for this computer to stop being so slow. Like it's not. Here we go. Let's go down. Sorry, bear with me. Now, the next one is socio-cultural. Now, this is, without doubt, another spelling mistake, sorry. Without doubt, my favourite part of, don't worry about that spelling mistake. It's my favourite part of psychology. The socio-cultural approach is looking at the social aspect of psychology. It is looking at, when we look at social, we look at culture. Okay, so it's very strongly linked with health or anything you'd learn in human development. So in regards to that, my areas are human development, PE, and psychology. So this sits very strongly with me. So psychologists who look at the socio-cultural approach, they want to know what social and cultural differences between individuals make them interact or just behave in different ways. So they look at a person's beliefs, their values, their traditions, and how that influences their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We know you don't need to be told this. It's pretty common knowledge that people interact in different nations in different ways. Okay, if you've ever been overseas, you've seen it. I just come back from a trip in Thailand, and when I was there, it is completely and utterly one of the rudest things to do is to touch someone on the head. Sounds very, very alien to us, but to them, it is completely normal. Okay, so in Australia, we don't have a lot of them, like a lot of those very different cultural influences on us, but in Australia, it is very, 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 very rare that someone will go and pump themselves up. If someone pumps themselves up and says, I'm the best at this, a lot of times people don't really feel not attracted to it, but see it as normal, and they see someone as arrogant or cocky or any other words you can think of in that respect. Whereas in places like America, it's okay to be a lot more confident. Okay, there is still arrogance, there is still cockiness, but it is thought to be a little bit more accepted. Let's look at this example. In Australia, it is rude to avoid talking to them, and if you've ever talked to me, I don't like eye contact, so I avoid it a lot of the time, or try to. But it is still rude if you just sat there with your head down while you were talking to someone in front of you. Okay, someone would think that you don't like them or that you're annoyed with them. Whereas in countries like Japan, it is considered disrespectful to look directly at someone when you are talking to them. So it's a complete polar opposite. So the importance of social norms and cultural influences are underpinned in the socio-cultural approaches to psychology. Okay. Now, my computer is... Apologise for it. Now, what I want you to do before you do anything, we're running out of time. What is psychology? I want you to write 4 words below on the same piece of paper what you think it is now. Okay. So keep these until the end of the PowerPoint. I want you to show me before you start. It's showing up. There we are. I want you to show me that piece of paper, but I want you to also do these questions below at the bottom of this slide. Before we do that, so this is just a simple, well-rounded look at psychology as a whole has. It needs to be understood that there are many complex aspects of each of those approaches we looked at, okay? That's not the be-all and end-all. There is a lot, and they will underpin everything we look at, every chapter we look at, as well as the research methods that we looked at in the rollover period. On top of this, what I want you to do now, I want you to know, first off, this PowerPoint is available to you in pickups. Use it as your resource, just as you would your textbook. On top of that, I want you to summarize each of these approaches and psychology itself. So start with psychology, actually. Right there at the top of your page, I want you to write a definition in your own words, not in the book's words, not in my words. And then I want you to summarize each of the approaches. Guess what? Your own words. Right. Then I want you to complete the following in your exercise books. So a different book. You've got your notebook for your notes, and you've got your exercise book for your exercises. I want you to do review 2.1, which is it's on page 50. Start from there. 2.2 is further on. 2.3, guess what? It's further on as well. Investigate starts at Invest 2.1 starts at page 52. I want you to skip Investigate 2.2 and I want you to do Investigate 2.3. If you have any qualms, concerns, any issues, please talk to me. I'm in the room. Okay? So it's okay to put your hand up and ask for help.